Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to attend our webinar this morning. My name is Mike Wolf from the North Dakota Association of Counties and the County Employer Group. And we're going to talk about some payroll reporting requirements for our annual payroll upload, some rate allocation, and some insurance coverage issues for you. It's been a little while since we've done a webinar on payroll reporting, and we have some new auditors and new deputy auditors and new human resource people who upload payroll. So I thought it would be good to put together another webinar for you. We are recording this webinar, and I will notify everybody afterwards because I know there were a few people who couldn't attend with the link to that. So you can use this webinar as a reference point. And afterwards, if you need any of my PowerPoint slides, I would be happy to email those out to anyone who would want those as well. So we'll get started with our webinar today. First, just a brief overview that North Dakota is considered a monopolistic state when it comes to workplace accident insurance. So that means the only place that employers in North Dakota can get coverage for workers' compensation is through the state fund, which is workforce safety and insurance. And workers' compensation coverage in all states is considered a no-fault insurance, and that means that an employee cannot sue the employer for a workplace injury if they're injured, and in return, claims are accepted by workforce safety and insurance, even though there may have been some employee negligence. So we'll talk about premiums, workforce safety and insurance premiums. Premiums are paid on an annual calendar year basis. And what affects the premium that you would pay as a county? First of all, the rate classes that you utilize that we'll be covering here shortly, the number of employees that you have in each rate class, and then the salary that's earned by each employee in each rate class will have an effect on the premium that you pay. Other things that might affect your premium are employee turnover. Those can cause fluctuations in premium because if you had somebody that worked for the first 6 months of the year and made X number of dollars in salary, and then someone was hired to replace that person for the remaining 6 months, now you're actually paying workers' compensation premium on 2 people, even though it's only 1 position. And then the experience rate for each county, that's calculated on an individual basis, and we'll talk about that today as well. And then risk management discounts that you get at the end of the year. Each county gets a premium discount for participating in our annual training that we just completed at the end of November. And then also if a county participates in the learning management system, our computer-based training program, then the county can get an additional 5% premium discount as well. So what's the importance of accurate payroll reporting? It means that you are paying the proper premium to workforce safety and insurance as an individual county, and it also means that we, the entire CEG group, is paying the proper premium to workforce safety and insurance. And being accurate with that payroll reporting, we want to make sure that you're not overpaying or underpaying any workers' compensation premiums. If we're audited, WSI could go back 3 years to conduct an audit, and if they found discrepancies in any payroll reporting, they can charge uncollected premiums, and then they can also charge interest on that premium that they should have collected in prior years. If we're ever audited by WSI and you have underpaid premiums because employees were not reported in the proper rate classification, that's probably where we would see the most errors. It's really hard for your county to come back and pay those additional premiums 2 or 3 years later because there aren't any budgeted funds to do that. So that's why it's very important that we're as accurate as possible with our payroll reporting. And as always, know that we are your resource for that here. And if you ever have any questions on where an employee should be classified, that's what we're here for, to help you to make sure that we have people in the correct classifications. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit today as well. So another thing that might trigger a workers' compensation audit, when an injury occurs, WSI will compare the job duties being done during the time of the injuries and cross-reference that with the rate classification payroll was reported under. So if you had someone in law enforcement who was a sheriff's deputy and you reported them under a different classification that wasn't geared to the law enforcement classification, that would kick out at Workforce Safety Insurance at the end of the year, and they would contact us to find out why the payroll wasn't reported under the proper classification. And so they have a checks and balances at Workforce Safety Insurance for every claim that's filed to make sure that payroll's being reported properly back to the correct rate class. So we'll talk about some rate classifications. WSI has probably about 145 different workers' compensation rate classes, and it's based upon the duties that the employees are performing within any given business in North Dakota. So some businesses may have a lot of rate classes because they have a diversity of duties being performed by their employees, like we do in county government, or they might have just one rate class if it's, let's say, a retail operation in North Dakota. Our rate classes all have a Z behind them, and that identifies WSI that county employees were being reported under that specific rate classification. And out of those approximate 145 rate classes from Workforce Safety and Insurance, the CEG utilizes about 17 of those. It doesn't mean every county uses every one of those rate classifications, but throughout the state, that's approximately how many we use. So the rate classes and salary drive the amount of premium paid by the county. The more hazardous the job, the higher the cost. So if we have somebody in the road department, that's a much more hazardous job than somebody who's working in an office setting all day. So the premium rates for those classifications will be higher for someone in a road department driving a road grader than they will be for somebody working, let's say, in the auditor's office. And so the dollar amount assigned to the rate class by WSI is then applied to a payroll cap per employee. The payroll cap each year is the average annual salary in North Dakota. And our current payroll cap, this is not correct on here. I will notify you of that. It's around $40,000 for 2024 for that payroll cap. So what that means is that if someone earns $70,000, WSI only charges premium on the payroll cap that's in effect each year. And that payroll cap can fluctuate from year to year. And so WSA also determines what premium amount is collected for each rate class by taking all the businesses in North Dakota that report payroll under those classes, and that's how they determine how much they're going to charge a premium on, based on how much money they collected under that rate class versus how much money they paid out in claims. And so when we pay a specific rate for a rate class, that's taken into consideration of all employers in the state of North Dakota that are contributing premium dollars to that rate classification. Another thing that can affect your workers' compensation premium is experience rating. And experience rating is a program that's used by insurance companies to gauge both past cost of injuries and maybe future chances of risk. So in the workers' comp industry, the lower the claims cost for your county, the lower workers' compensation and premiums will be, because if you're under what they're expecting us to have in losses, then you can earn a discount on your premium. And Workforce Safety and Insurance uses a 3-year premium period for claims costs when calculating your experience rate. So WSI calculates what the expected losses should be for a county of your size according to the payroll that's expended and the rate classes that are being utilized. So if your actual claims costs are lower than the expected claims costs that WSI has calculated, your county gets a discount on the premium. If your actual claims costs are higher than the expected claims costs WSI calculates, then your county is surcharged additional premiums. So we, for budgeting purposes for workforce safety and insurance, in July of every year, we calculate that experience rate and your estimated premium for the upcoming year based on a 3-year average of your payroll. So every July, we calculate that estimated premium. So in July of 2025 upcoming, we will calculate your 2026 estimated premium. And then at the end of each year, we reconcile that with the actual payroll. And this is a workforce safety and insurance process that all employers have to follow. So beginning in about a week, we will start gathering payroll from 2024, and that will run into January of 2025, where you will have time to upload your 2020 payroll, and then we will reconcile that based on what was estimated for your 2024 premium. So you can think of experience rating like your car insurance or maybe your house insurance, depending upon how much you use it or don't use it, right? So if you don't use your maybe house insurance or your car insurance, you can get a good driver's discount for doing that. And experience rating in the workers' comp industry operates basically the same way. So here are the rate classification that the CEG utilizes. There's the 17 different rate classes that the CEG utilizes. Some counties use maybe all of these. Some counties maybe only use a portion of these, depending upon what type of operations that you have going on. And so if you have any questions on where maybe you need to classify an employee and you can't figure out from this list, then that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you for that. Now, all of these rate classifications are also listed on the certificate of premium payment that I send to you each year in March that needs to be posted on your bulletin boards as a requirement of workforce safety and insurance. And if we don't have that certificate of premium posted on a bulletin board somewhere in your county, WSI could assess a $250 penalty to your location if that's not posted. So all of these rate classifications are on the certificate that you receive each year. So again, if you have any questions on what classifications you should or shouldn't utilize or where employees need to be classified, be sure and contact us and we'll be happy to make sure that we get people in the right classifications to once again assure that accurate payroll reporting to WSI. And just a note to everyone, do not report any social service wages in your CEG payroll upload because we have a separate account for that. And here are the social service rate classifications descriptions that we use for our social service account. That's a separate account, and each of the 19 zones will set up or send in payroll uploads to me just based on the social service payroll. So we use much less classifications in our social service areas because, again, it's the nature of the business and the duties that those employees are performing. So we basically use only about 4 rate classifications in the social service payroll upload compared to the 17 in the CEG payroll upload. So we have our 8747, our traveling personnel, our clerical office people, and we'll talk about the clerical office requirements. We have our domestics, right? The domestics is for those employees who go into homes and help individuals with cooking, cleaning, bathing, those type of activities. A little more physical labor. It's probably the most physical labor portion of the rate classes for the social service, so that has a little higher premium amount than the traveling people or the office person. If a social service employee works between two zones, the payroll should be combined into one entry. So we will make sure that we make sure that happens when we upload to WSI. And we're going to talk about this a little more too, but just a reminder that wages cannot be split between 8805 and any other class. So either someone in the 8805 can only be there 100% of the time. If not, they have to be put in another rate classification. And for social services, the 8747 rate class are for those employees that make home visits or travel outside of the office, but might just be meeting with people who do not do any of the domestic labor duties. So again, if you're ever unsure, err on the side of reporting wages under 8747 if you have questions between the 8805 100% clerical office or the traveling representative classification. And again, we'd be happy to help you make that determination for you. The amount of premium between those two is very, very minimal. So it's better to err on the side of the 8740 class than the 8805 classification. So here are some of the payroll reporting guidelines that we must follow for workforce safety and insurance. And if we don't, then those are things that could generate an audit from them as well. And that starts with classification 8805Z. And that classification is only for people who work 100% of the time in the office. And so if someone doesn't work 100% of the time in the office, they cannot be classified under 8805. The only exception that WS allows for the 8805 is if there's a person who goes to get the mail at the post office once a day, they could still be reported under 8805. So if you have a PO box that someone had to check and that person did that on a regular basis, WSI allows that person, if all of their other duties throughout the course of the year are 100% clerical office, they could be classified under the 8805 classification. So otherwise, if an employee does leave the office even once or twice a year for any other reason, you need to classify those people under 8747. And again, the difference in premium is very minimal, and we would rather err towards the 8747 class than worry about any discrepancies. So if a person who's in the office goes to meeting one time a year outside the office, you might travel to a seminar once per year, you need to be reported under 8747. Okay, all our elected and appointed officials such as commissioners, auditor, treasurer, emergency manager, all of those are virtually all classification 8747 because they do come and go to meetings. And WSI is very strict about payroll reporting, and we usually get questioned each year by WSI about concerns over those payroll reporting issues, and a lot of times they center around the 8805 classification. So we'll talk about splitting payroll between different rate classifications. So this is a way for counties to potentially save some money on your workers' compensation premium, because we can split payroll between rate classifications if employees are doing different duties between two or more separate rate classes. And in a lot of those cases, you're going to save money, as I said. There are a few circumstances where payroll cannot be split between different rate classes. So as we've talked about already, you cannot split wages between 8805 clerical office and any other rate class. If you have public health and you have nurses and those type of things at your that are covered under the CEG, any nurses, certified nurse assistants, therapists providing home services, similar to hospital care under the 90-40 classification. That's who should go under that class. You cannot split their wages with any other classification. We have the 90-42 classification, which are nurses and employees that provide outpatient services. So if people are coming in to the office for a flu shot or for something else, and those nurses are not traveling outside of the facility to provide home services, then their wages can be reported under 90-42 and cannot be split. And then we have classification 91-82, and that's for our parks and campground employees, and that includes all duties of those employees. So that would include the people who are maybe doing the mowing and the maintenance. And then if you had somebody working in a building that is taking the camping fees and those type of things, they're not going to be out mowing and doing those other things, but they still have to be reported under the 91-82 classification because it's considered a composite classification. And so all employees that are involved in the park and campground duties would be reported under 91-82. And people ask, well, how do we verify payroll splits if we're going to split wages between classes? Time cards is a way to do it. And in a lot of cases, we utilize the supervisor estimate. And so we'll talk about that a little bit too. So here's some splitting payroll examples for you. Last year, and when we got our payroll uploads from all our counties, we did have several counties that split payroll between 8805 clerical and other rate classes, and that is incorrect. Okay, make sure the classifications are correct on your spreadsheet. Last year, some counties had a classification 8852, which isn't even a rate class, right? And that was supposed to be an 8805. Last year, we had people reporting 8705 and 8714, which are not rate classes, and they were supposed to be under 8747. So always double check so you don't have any numbers transposed, because that kicks out an error when we try to upload that to workforce safety and insurance, and then we have to make manual adjustments to our spreadsheets. So some splitting payroll examples that you can use. And again, if you have any questions on whether you can or cannot split payroll, just get a hold of us and we'll be happy to help you with that. So these are examples of things that have happened, especially this in the sheriff's office, where we have a female dispatcher who's generally dispatched probably 98% of the time, right? So that could be a clerical office if she were 100% of the time. But just because of the employee makeup in a department, maybe there's a female dispatcher who is asked to assist with a female prisoner whenever that situation arises throughout the course of the year. So normally, if she only dispatched for the entire year, her wages would be reported under clerical office 8805. But since she assisted with a female prisoner, now a portion of her wages need to be reported under 7720, the law enforcement classification. Because if she were ever injured doing that, and maybe it was the one time of the year that she helped do that, and her wages were reported all under 8805, WSI would kick that out because the two rate classifications wouldn't match up. So now you would have to report that employee's wages, that female dispatcher, you would have to now put the majority of her wages under 8747 and that small percentage under the 7720 law enforcement classification, because we can't split between 8805. So now you have to bump down to the 8747 classification. And then that way, if there were an injury that one time that she assisted, then we've properly reported that to workforce safety and insurance. And payroll can be split even if it's only a couple times a year and only a couple percent of the wages. So it doesn't matter how small that percentage is. It could be 2%. You could put 2% of her wages under there, and WSI would still accept that as a payroll split. We've had these situations in counties where a husband is a custodian in a county and the wife wants to help but doesn't get paid. Okay, so now there's no coverage for the wife, and if she were injured, she could sue the county for damages. So either don't allow that to happen or cover her under volunteer coverage. And we'll talk about that later on as well. But don't just let someone come into the county as a non-paid employee to assist a paid employee, because you can face some liability issues if that person were injured. We had a situation in the county where an employee worked clerical office during the day and then at night did janitorial work after regular work hours, but still got paid by the county for the janitorial work after hours. So that county reported wages under 8805 and 9007, the custodian classification, and that got kicked out by Workforce Safety and Insurance because we cannot split those wages with 8805. So the correct split must be 8747 and 9007. For our risk managers, we have some risk managers who are in maintenance. Those risk manager wages should then be split between 9007 and the 8747 classification, because risk managers do travel to meetings throughout the course of the year. And so that will save the county premium by splitting out those wages while doing the risk management duties. So you could figure a percentage of the time that that risk manager spends on risk management duties versus how much time they spend on their janitorial duties. So you could make a payroll split of that and you would save money. A lot of our risk managers work in the courthouse, maybe in the auditor's office, in HR, recorder's office, a number of different offices, and generally they would all then be reported under 8747, even though they might otherwise do only clerical office duties, because they do leave the office to attend our meetings or may have to leave the courthouse to go check out an accident or something like that. So all risk manager wages should be either split with 8747 or all of their wages under 8747. We had a situation, and we have these situations where people change jobs during the course of the year. So we had an employee who worked as a janitor part of the year and then changed to a clerical job later in the year. In this case, if you notify me of that when you submit your payroll report, I can then let WSI know that that employee was actually hired for two separate jobs, so that they would then allow a special circumstance like this to let the employer allow that 8805 and 900 split of payroll. But we need to be notified of that, and then I have to pre-notify Workforce Safety and Insurance. So if you have an employee who changed duties which affected their rate classifications and it affected the 8805 class, please let us know about that. Now, if you had somebody that worked in the 9007 as a janitor and then went to a job where they went in and out of the office, and that would be class 8747, then you could just split the wages between those two classifications and you wouldn't need to notify me, and there wouldn't be an issue with that. When we get into our road departments, here's where counties can save money if you split your payroll. For the road supervisor, maybe you could split their payroll up to 3 different ways, right? You could consider some wages for administrative duties and put that under 8747. And you could put them under the 6042 classification. If they ever go out and operate machinery, you would need to report their wages under the 6042 class. And if they ever help perform any duties in the shop, then you would report them under the 3630 shop classifications. So we have situations where some of our road supervisors have their payroll split up to 3 ways. A lot of them might only be 2 ways. It might be the shop in 8747, or it might be the the operating machinery in the 8747 classification, but it's a way for you to save money to do that. For our road department employees, those can be split up to two ways. Under 6042 when they're operating the trucks, their road graders, and other machinery. And then the 3630 classification if they perform shop duties at times throughout the years. So the wages can be split accordingly by percentage. And so it's sometimes hard to go back and check time cards with all of that. If you have time cards, you can figure it out that way if they're actually allocating time between the shop and their other road department duties. But most counties supervisors are estimating between a 75-25 or an 80-20 split, meaning 75% of the time they're working with the heavy machinery and 25% of the time they may be working in the shop, or the 80-20, 80 in the machinery, 20 in the shop. So you might have a winter where you're not out on the road every day with snow plows and doing stuff outside. So now they're doing stuff around the shop, and that's where you can come up with that split, and that will save your county premium dollars. But that split can be anything, right? It could be 90-10, whatever you determine to be accurate, but we do have to be able to justify that at some point, and workforce safety is never really questioned a 75-25 split or an 80-20 split for those wages for our road employees. If we have our weed officer, for our weed department employees, they're under 0010. But for our weed officer, you could split their wages up to two ways between the weed spraying, if they do go out and perform those duties. And maybe there's some weed officers that don't, so then 100% of their salary could be under the 8747 class for administrative duties. But if they do spray, you can split their wages between those two classifications as well, and that would save you premiums as well. So just a cap, remember that any payroll split between different rate classes is possible as long as it doesn't involve 8805, 9040, 9042, and 9182. And again, if you ever have any questions on where wages should be reported, don't be afraid to ask us. We want to be as accurate as we can for workforce safety purposes. That makes your premium accurate, and it makes our payment to WSI accurate as well. So here's one of the changes that WSI has now implemented for this coming year. Again, actually it was for last year, and we didn't know about it until after the fact, and it had caused a lot of manual work on our side after all the payroll was uploaded. But WSI does not allow employees to be listed more than once in the same rate classification. So what we were seeing on the payroll uploads last year, we would see employees when they were listing the department codes on the payroll upload, they might list somebody in the auditor's office, and then they would list them in the recorder's office. And in the auditor's line item, they would say they made $22,000, and in the recorder's line item, they made $10,000. Okay, doing the same duties, and they reported under the same rate class, whatever that rate class was, whether it was 8805 or 8747. So now WSI does not allow that. And I know that counties do that probably for allocating premium back to those departments, and that's why they list it like that on the payroll upload. But now those employees, even though they work between two different departments and are going to be reported under the same rate class, need to be combined into one payroll entry. So we can't have them two. If they're reported as two, WSI is going to kick that report out, and then we're going to have to go in and make a separate adjustment and combine those salaries. And last year, I would say there were probably about 450 of those type of entries into payroll reports throughout our 56 locations. And so it was a very time consuming process to go in and manually combine those payrolls. So I don't know if it's maybe a process of where you're going to have to save one of your payroll sheets as just a workers' compensation upload, and then keep your other payroll sheet that's going to be able to allocate dollars and premiums and whatever else you may do back to those different departments based on the salaries that employees uh, earned. So that's one big change from WSI for this upcoming year for us to make sure that we have to combine all salaries if they're under the same rate classification. So other important payroll reporting things you need to know, Social Security numbers need to be 9 numbers. If a Social Security number starts with a 0, it needs to show that 0. And if you need help formatting those, it would be in the payroll upload instructions that I'm going to be sending out probably either later this week or early next week whenever we're ready to start our upload process. But I will outline that in their step-by-step instructions. So if you need to format your Social Security numbers to make sure that those who start with a 0 have that 0 showing. Otherwise, again, that would show up as an error and that would kick that payroll report out when we try to upload to WSI. And make sure that your Social Security numbers are correct for people. Make sure you double check that. We had a lot of errors where Social Security numbers were listed, the same Social Security number for 2 different people. And so again, that causes upload instructions for that. And also, it also kicks out if employees are reported with 0 earnings. Okay, so make sure that nobody is on your payroll upload with 0 earnings. So sometimes counties copy over their payroll sheet from one year to the next, and John Doe might have worked in the road department in 2023 and earned some money, but in 2024 he didn't come back as a seasonal employment, but he's still on the payroll list sheet, and so his earnings would show 0s. And so make sure all of those people are not included in your payroll upload because that will also cause upload errors when we try to submit that to Workforce Safety and Insurance. Here's a big change. It's going to have an impact probably for the first year or so for counties as far as additional work for counties to do and for us at the CEG to have to do. But this process in the long run might be okay because it's going to allow more frequent reporting of a payroll upload, and people will become more familiar with doing it with repetition. The issue we run into now is this is now a one time a year process, and so people have a hard time trying to remember what they did the year before, right? I even do here, and I've done it for many years. When you only do something once a year, there might be some issues with that. So WSI is going to quarterly reporting starting in 2025. And so that's going to be a big change for that. So instead of reporting once per year on an annual basis, we're now going to be required to report 4 times a year. Okay, so for the CEG, this means that payroll will be reported at the end of March, June, September, and December. So it's going to become a once a year process. And so what WSI will then do is they're going to consolidate all 4 quarters, but we're still only going to be billed once per year. So we're not going to have to pay quarterly premiums every quarter. They're just gathering payroll information, and then they're going to consolidate all 4 quarters into one report at the end of the year and then charge us our premium just like they've always done. I never did get a really good reason why they are going to quarterly reporting for whatever statistics they're going to be keeping it for. I don't know if it's from an actuarial standpoint or what it is, but they are moving for every employer to quarterly reporting. So that's going to be a little bit of a increase in workload for our counties to upload payroll 4 times a year now rather than once per year. And generally, we will have 30 days to get all 56 locations consolidated into one report and uploaded to Workforce Safety, just like we do now with our annual report. Our year end is 12/31, and so we have to have all 56 locations payroll consolidated and uploaded to Workforce Safety Insurance by January 31st. And so, and it does take us almost a month to do that. So we'll have the first 2 weeks of the month preceding the or after the quarter, and then we'll have a couple weeks internally here where it will take us to get that all organized and submitted to Workforce Safety and Insurance. So this is a Workforce Safety and Insurance mandate. It's not our CEG mandate, but hopefully in the long run, people will get more comfortable with doing the payroll upload, will become more experienced with the rate classifications where employees need to be reported under. And so it's going to be a bigger workload, but hopefully in the long run, it will pay benefits for us. Okay, also other things to know with your payroll reporting, and a lot of this will be in the payroll instruction reporting document that I'll be emailing out to you. WSI now requires commas in the salary and no dashes in Social Security numbers. Now, this has been in effect for a couple of years now, but we've still had a couple counties in the past that weren't putting the commas in and still had the dashes in the payroll, so we had to make some internal adjustments here. But again, the cleaner that we can get the reports from our counties, the easier it is to consolidate all 56 locations for that one payroll upload to WSI. And again, a reminder that the payroll for human services is reported under a separate payroll upload on the CEG website. So instructions will be sent to the auditors on that process. And again, just a reminder, do not include the human service wages in your regular CEG upload. And if you have any questions about that, again, please reach out to us and we would be more than happy to help. We'll talk about, finish up with just a few coverage issues. These are good things for our counties to know when it comes to workers' compensation insurance and where people should be covered and some of the liabilities that are associated with work that's being performed in the counties. So when you have contractors performing work for your county by an outside contractor who has employees, always make sure you request that they provide a proof of coverage certificate for workers' compensation coverage before letting them do any work. If they don't have some coverage and someone is injured, then WSI could come after the county for penalties and premium because you hired the company and you're considered the general contractor in that case. So make sure you're requesting certificates of premium payment from Workforce Safety from that employer to make sure they're properly covered in case one of their employees is injured. Then the county doesn't face any potential liabilities if that person is non-insured. Now, if you hire self-employed contractors to do work in the county, under WSI law, self-employed individuals are not required to secure workers' compensation coverage on themselves. We might recommend that they sign a document that might be made up by your state's attorney, acknowledging that they're self-employed and do not qualify for workers' compensation coverage if an injury occurs. Okay, just another layer of protection for you so that somebody doesn't come back later and say, well, I was really an employee of the county. I wasn't an independent contractor. And so it could be a deterrent for that person to possibly do that. Now, if you hire a self-employed contractor, they don't have to have that coverage. But what if you hire somebody to do some painting, and you hire Joe's Painting, and Joe's the owner of the business, and pretty soon there's another guy there, Pete, helping him do the painting, right? He's not self-employed anymore, right? So now you would need to approach them and say, hey, we need your workers' comp certificate if you um, have somebody helping you here. And they might say, well, Pete's a partner in the business with me. Well, then we need to check with workforce safety and insurance, with maybe the labor department for contractors licenses, all that type of thing, to make sure, because a lot of times self-employed contractors hire one of their friends or someone to help them with a job and pay them cash. Okay. And those people getting paid cash is just fine until someone gets hurt, right? Then all of a sudden, the person who gets hurt realizes they don't have any coverage, and they're going to come after somebody. And if that self-employed person didn't have any coverage, again, you would be considered the general contractor, and they could be some potential liability for the county. Volunteer coverage, I think most counties now have volunteer contracts in force with workforce safety insurance. If you don't, you definitely should have volunteer coverage contract, because if you have any volunteers working for you, there's a separate policy under workforce safety and insurance that employers can get that will protect the employer if an injury occurs. Okay, if not, and you don't have this coverage, the volunteer could sue the county for damages if there's no coverage in place. The coverage is unbelievably reasonable at $250 minimum premium, which would cover approximately 27 volunteers throughout the course of the year. So we had a situation in the county where the county had a library. There was an elderly gentleman who was volunteering to work at the library, was leaving the library one day in the wintertime, slipped and fell and hit his head on the concrete sidewalk walking out of the library. And since it was still on county property, that was a viable potential workplace accident injury. But since he was a volunteer, the county did not have a volunteer contract in place at the time, so they could have potentially been sued by that volunteer for medical damages, right? Luckily, that employee did not do that, and the county was fortunate that that didn't happen. So by having this coverage in force, a volunteer cannot come back and sue the county because you've provided insurance coverage for them. Another big area where you should have the volunteer coverage in place is for your inmate and work release, your community service that is handed out by the courts. We highly recommend you cover these individuals under the separate volunteer coverage. Again, it protects the county from liability if an injury were to occur. We had a situation in the county where somebody was assigned community service work through the courts. The county put them on a riding lawnmower in one of their parks. The employee got injured, and the county did have the volunteer inmate work release coverage in effect, and so that employee was covered for all of those medical costs associated with that injury. It covers 100% of all medical costs. There's no disability because they're volunteers, so there's no payroll involved, but it covers 100% of the medical costs if there were an injury to a volunteer or somebody doing community service. And you couldn't secure insurance anywhere else in the world for a $250 minimum premium that provides 100% coverage. And a lot of counties use it also when they're doing emergency management exercises, and they're asking the public to come in and be victims and participate in that exercise. And if you take out that volunteer coverage for that exercise, you can let your volunteers know that we're providing coverage. So if there's ever an injury, you're going to be covered. If that volunteer that did an emergency exercise couldn't go back to their regular job, then there would be disability benefits in place for somebody like that. So it's a great coverage and a great protection for counties to have. Again, if you hire an independent contractor who's going to come in, we talked a little bit about it as a self-employed individual. Um, you never know. Nothing's 100% with workers' comp making a determination if somebody's injured with you. So we can obtain a written determination from WSI before allowing an independent contractor to work, or have them sign that independent contractor agreement stating they understand that they're not covered under workers' compensation insurance if they're performing any duties for the county. Now, if we have employees working out of state, this has really become an issue where we have many more people working out of state. We need to notify WSI that people are working out of state. Workforce safety and insurance will extend coverage if the employee is out of state for less than 30 days. However, if the employee will be out of the state for more than 30 consecutive days, the county needs to have a separate insurance policy in the state where that work is being conducted. Now, these situations are predominantly when we have employees who are attending a law enforcement training academy for an extended period of time. Maybe they're taking canine training, those type of things, detective training. And if it's for 30 days or more, there is no extension of coverage through North Dakota workforce safety and insurance. And therefore, the county is required to purchase coverage in that state. Now, it all depends upon the situation. Sometimes we have people that have been gone up to 90 days at these training facilities. So if they were gone for 90 days, but they came home every 29 days, then we could extend our North Dakota coverage. But a lot of times that isn't cost effective for the counties to pay for an airfare to come back from Tennessee to North Dakota every 29 days. And so they have those people stay out there that entire time. And so that's when we need to secure that coverage. And it's not always easy finding a private insurance company willing to take on a short-term risk. Okay, so that's why we need to know if we have law enforcement people, especially going to training somewhere. The sooner we know that, the sooner we can get on top of it. We will assist the county in putting you in contact with private insurance companies to secure that coverage. We had a situation this summer where we were contacted in April that a county was having somebody go to a training academy on July 1st, and they were going to be gone for 3 months, and they were not going to be coming back during that time period. And so we knew about it in April, and we finally secured coverage around the first week in June, where we finally found a private insurance company willing to take on that risk. And sometimes it just takes longer than others. We've had cases where we've been able to take care of that in a couple weeks. But the sooner we know that we're going to have employees working out of state for more than 30 consecutive days, then we want to know about that so we can get that process started and assist you in making sure that those employees will be covered. And here's just kind of as a scenario of us contacting workforce safety and insurance. I contact them every single time, whether it's going to be 30 days or not, to get written verification from them whether they're going to cover the county or not. And so we just want to be consistent in doing that to make sure that we know, the county knows, that we need to secure potentially some extra workers' compensation coverage. We had an issue come up with coroner. We went probably 20 years in our CEG program before a coroner had filed a workers' compensation injury claim, right? Every county assigns a coroner. Sometimes a county employee, such as the sheriff, might be appointed as the coroner, which wouldn't be an issue, right? Because that payroll is going to be reported as a county employee as well, all of that payroll. If you're reporting the coroner as an employee, like the sheriff is also the coroner. Now you can split the coroner wages under 8747 and the sheriff's wages under 7720. But issues are also out there with county who uses a third party as a coroner. So if you use a third party as a coroner, you either must report that person as an employee or you draw up a contract as an independent contractor. Okay. Some counties, we have a county that contracts maybe with a hospital. You should still put the agreement in writing indicating the hospital is responsible for workers' compensation coverage for the person who's acting as the coroner. Okay. We had a situation where the county contracted with a mortician. Okay, you should have an agreement in writing indicating that the mortician is responsible for workers' compensation coverage for that person, whoever's acting as the coroner. Okay, we had a situation like that in a coroner, and that's when a claim injury arose about 4 years ago, where the county had contracted with a mortician. One of the employees of the funeral home was acting as the coroner and got hurt and filed a workers' compensation claim. Since there was no agreement between the county and the mortician, WSI said that person is a employee of the county and we had to accept liability for that claim. So we want to make sure that we're properly covered when it comes to coroners, and that either you're reporting someone as being the coroner for the county or you have an agreement set up with someone indicating that everyone knows exactly who's responsible for the workers' compensation coverage. So with that, that's a lot of information in about an hour's worth of time. Um, Please know that we recorded this. I'll send out a link to the recording. I can send you the slides, but most importantly, know that we're here at the CEG to assist you with any questions you have. You can contact me. My email address is here. Michael Casey also is part of the payroll upload reporting process here at the CEG. He will be able to help as well. He will be taking over the payroll uploading program. So just know that we're here to help you in any way that we can to make sure that people are classified correctly and that we have accurate payroll reporting and that people are covered properly, whether they're independent contractors, self-employed people, or people traveling out of the state. So with that, feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to help. I'll be sending out the payroll upload instruction Word document here in within the next week, and we will begin starting our payroll upload process the last week of December and then into the first 2 weeks of January. So with that, thank you very much for attending, and please have a great rest of your day. Thank you.